P&O's Iona is a big ship, flogging itself to a big audience, and it's doing its best to entertain everyone. During my week on board, there were some big hits, some stuff wobbling between alright and quite good, and some big piles of Nicole Scherzinger's Shhh. This is the full rundown of pretty much everything that you can expect on board. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we go. The first entertainment I saw was in the Limelight Club, so let's start there. It's a smaller cabaret type venue that seats around 200 people. When I was in there with 23 people for a pay extra dinner and show, the atmosphere was a bit weird. I'll tell you about the food in the dining review. The artist on board for this trip was a musical theatre woman named Cassidy Jansen. There was a lot of sitting around in awkward silence to begin with. 23 people in a room set up for a few hundred are too shy to really talk. I mean, not me, but I was there on my own. So the first half an hour or so really dragged. Eventually a house band made some noise for a bit, then there was a Q&A with Cassidy, and I certainly didn't know who she was, and nobody else seemed to either. So without any scandal or truth bombs being dropped, the Q&A was a bit dull. What's your favourite song? What's your favourite musical? Probably fascinating to her fans, but for me, not so much. More empty nothingness followed before eventually, about 3 weeks after we first sat down, Cassidy returned to the stage to bash out some songs. Now that bit was really good. Obviously she can sound a bit musical theatre-ish, but she was mainly doing musical theatre songs, so it all worked. She must have felt a bit deflated, belting out songs as if she was on the pyramid stage, to an audience that could have quite easily squeezed into my living room. I felt a bit sorry for her, really. If the act is one that you know and you want to see, and if there's a decent sized audience, then I imagine it's a much better night. Not the act's fault, but they squeezed a 45-minute show into a 3-hour plus gap, and there was just too much waiting around. Her bit was an 8 out of 10. The Q&A was a 4, and the thing as a whole, probably a 3. They also have included shows slotted in around the paid-for stuff. I saw the house band, the Limelights, perform a 30-minute show. Not by choice, but that was the only way to make sure that I got a seat to see the show immediately after. The musicians were decent enough, but any band lives or dies on the quality of its singer. When she started to sing, I didn't really care if it was them or me that died. I just wished that one of us would. It was the kind of stuff you'd see in a Phoenix night-style social club. 3 out of 10. The Limelights were followed by comedian Noel Brody. During the brief break for people to get drinks, a section of stage slid out to cover the dance floor so that there wasn't a huge gap between Noel and the audience. That bit was quite exciting, and probably the high point of the night. Noel Brody is firmly in the cruise ship comedian rather than proper comedian camp. There is a clip of him online at a proper comedy club, but it's a weekday open mic night. The whole thing felt like material that was doing the rounds in factory canteens in the 1980s. I was sat front row, but I didn't feel a pang of anxiety standing up and walking out. Often, people worry about getting into a battle of wits with a comedian, but this guy was unarmed. He's not edgy, he's not niche, he's not offensive. He's just not very good. 3 out of 10. The Headliners Theatre was a different prospect altogether. Most of the seats get a good view. There is a triangle on each side that's obstructed a bit by the big tech box in the centre, but this wasn't my first time, so I knew to get there early and sit at the front. It is a modern ship with modern tech, but the sound is much better on the older Ventura, which I was on a few months earlier. Possibly better kit, possibly just needs a few knobs and dials fiddling with. I saw 2 separate shows by a group called Midnight in Vegas. Weirdly, they introduce themselves as a band from London, and then say, I'm from Scotland, I'm from Ireland, I'm from Dorset. They are from London in the same way that I'm from the leisure centre swimming baths. Whatever, Wherever they are from, they are absolutely awesome. The first show was a full-on country and folk show, which they would have to mess up pretty bad for me not to like, but they didn't. It was incredible. Each one of them has an incredibly powerful voice. They probably didn't need the microphones. If I absolutely had to find fault, they were dressed identically, all in red, with matching cowboy hats, but it did quietly bother me for the entire show that they all had different shoes on. The second show was a mix of music, rock, pop, modern, 80s, but all with a country twist. It wasn't as good, but that's mainly because I liked the songs in the first show better. They wore different outfits, so the odd shoes wasn't a factor. Show 1 was a 9, this one was an 8, so overall, Midnight in Vegas, 8.5 out of 10. I loved them. Digital was one of 3 production shows by the ship's company. It feels like the cousin of a show called Imagination that is currently doing the rounds on Cunard. It's AI computer stuff that is supposed to be futuristic, but is actually way behind the technology that most of us currently use every day. There was a bit too much exposition. The plot is paper thin and not very engaging. It might as well be dropped completely and just be made into, here are some songs, here's some dancing, and here's some hokey but fun special effects. It was the weakest of the 3 shows, but still enjoyable. 7 out of 10. Ben Francis is a musical theatre dude. I don't know him, but apparently he's done some good stuff. Of course, that's based entirely on him telling me so during the 2 shows that he did on board. He's a bit cheesy, but it comes across like he knows that he is. He's enjoyable to listen to when he's talking, and he is a pleasure to listen to when he is singing. I liked him a lot, so I don't want to be unkind, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you that his promo photos must be older than my house. And my house is grade 2 listed. 8 out of 10. Sky's the Limit was an absolute banger. I've seen this show before and I thought, nah, it was okay. Either I was in a bad mood that day, a good mood this time round, or this was just a different cast and they were better. This show rocked. It's some vaguely connected bits and bobs about airports and flying around the world. There is loads of scenery that gets jumped on, in, under, and danced on. It never stops to catch its breath. And there's a big plastic aeroplane that pops up from under the stage and wobbles around. It was fantastic. 9 out of 10. The final theatre show of this trip was Greatest Days, the Take That musical. A show that I should have already seen on 3 different ships, but it seems to get cancelled a lot. Now, ABBA songs are so indestructible that they can't be ruined, even by Pierce Brosnan groaning through them. Simon and Garfunkel songs are so robust that even the boys on Ambition couldn't put a dent in them. Take That songs are not as strong. There is a plot to it which is basic but makes sense, but the staging seemed pretty lackluster compared to Sky's the Limit, and the Iona boys, for whatever reason, didn't do the best job of whacking out the tunes. But the girls were absolutely fantastic, particularly the tiny little one with the Wallace and Gromit smile. For quite a while, I was sat enduring a 5 out of 10 show. But something changed around the halfway stage, and by the time the incredibly manipulative and sentimental climax came, I was loving it and holding my head dead still to try to stop a tear falling out. 8 out of 10. There was a C-Day matinee show in here too, and it was odd. The posters and description made it sound like some kind of choose-your-own-adventure game, like those books from the 80s. Open door number 1 and turn to page 56. Open door number 2 and turn to page 70. It wasn't that. The first 10 or 15 minutes was a guy from Liverpool who seemed to be trying to tell some kind of I survived story that I didn't really get. Started asking odd, self-help type questions of the audience and then abruptly introduced a soldier who came on and did a bit of a talk. I don't know this, but I suspect that this is a very early version of this lecture, and the soldier is very new to public speaking. He wasn't very clear when he was speaking. He used lots of military abbreviations and acronyms, and he covered so many topics that it was hard to keep up, in so little detail that it was difficult to care. Think there is a good show in there, probably a dozen shows. What we really need is to get rid of the irrelevant intro and for the soldier to tell us much more about much less. 5 out of 10. The Clubhouse is brilliantly named. It's literal. This venue is exactly like a clubhouse on a British holiday park. Through the day, there's playtime and toddlers running around the dance floor, playing games with the kids' club staff. There are quizzes and games of bingo, the odd game show, and Trigger's broom of bands Pulse takes to the stage most nights. This old band has had 16 new singers and 11 new drummers. And then there's a disco late into the night. I found myself in there accidentally late one morning with my laptop when THAT started. Little kids running around giggling and having fun was dead sweet. I was actually just about to take a photo when I realised none of those are your kids. Put your phone away, you lunatic. Having seen that there was a dinosaur workshop on, the following day I accidentally on purpose found myself in there again. Ship quizzes are a pretty standard issue. I don't play bingo, I'm 42. And this particular version of Pulse was decent. Clubhouse isn't really for me, but it serves a purpose. Dinosaur Workshop alone makes it worthy of at least a 6 out of 10. The other firmly family-geared entertainment is in the Skydome. It's a glass ball on top of the ship, inspired by, but not as good as, floating centre parks. Pool and pizza by day and home to utterly bizarre entertainment choices by night. You have probably heard about the Nicole Scherzinger sort of long, sort of music video, Shhh. If you have seen it, then you'll know that it's a prequel to the movie It, and they should be seen together as a double bill. Shhh. It. There was a show in here called Rise, and it's hard to say what was going on. As far as I could tell, some drama students had made their own bird costumes from the recycling bin and lost property, and they were waddling around or hanging from wires. It was bizarre. I didn't hate it, I just didn't really understand why it existed. But there were plenty of kids around, despite it being A, term time, and B, past any sensible bedtime, and they were absolutely transfixed. I won't score it, you can work out if it's suitable for you and your family based on that. After Shhh and Rise, I was pretty convinced that the Skydome entertainment was aimed at not me. But I was too tempted by the Taylor Swift tribute act to miss it. Firstly, because if she was good, then I'd enjoy it. Secondly, by going to see her, it allowed me to crowbar in a big, clanging multiple name drop. So, here it is. In 2013, when I was still a Billy Big Banana, I was one of 300 guests at Kensington Palace at a fundraiser. Jonathan Ross was the host. James Blunt, Tiny Temper, Taylor Swift, and Bon Jovi performed. The finale was Prince William and Taylor Swift doing karaoke on stage with Bon Jovi. I remember thinking at the time, if I didn't already know, seeing her do karaoke Bon Jovi, I'd never guessed that Taylor Swift was a professional singer. She does Bon Jovi the way that we would all do Bon Jovi. And Colin Firth stole my taxi. Clang, clang, clang. Anyway, watching Liz Jones perform as Taylor Swift, I'd never guessed that she was a professional singer either. But, while she is no better singer than I am, she did really give a good effort. She changed costume every 7 seconds. She seemed to be having a lovely old time, and again, the kids around all loved it. It was sort of so bad that it was good. She performed again a few nights later, this time as Lady Gaga. Same. What I did realise this time round was that she actually has a fantastic voice. She just has no control over it. Once in a while, she would really nail a line. Then normal ear bleeding service would resume. It was sort of a vocal version of a drunk toddler wielding a shotgun. The last real entertainment is at the 710 Club down in the atrium on Deck 6. It's included in the fare, but you do have to book all but the late show. It was fully booked the moment I stepped on board, so I hit the late show most evenings. This is the venue that P&O love to tell people was designed by Gary Barlow. What I can tell you is that Gary Barlow knows as much about venue design as I know about, well, I don't think there is anything that I know so little about. This is a dreadfully designed venue. There's not so much a stage as a raised bit in one corner where some instruments, musicians and extension leads are crammed in. Most of the guests can't get a clear view because there are pillars in the middle of the room, so if you don't rush to get a front seat, then you are skip out of luck. I've got no pride, so I did rush to get a front seat. Anyway, the 710 Club Band, as far as I can tell, is also a Triggers broom of rotating musicians punting out loosely themed collections of live music. Now, rubbish venue as it is still great. There's a real grungy feel to the place and it feels like real musicians. Maybe a student band or something, doing a gig for free beer in the corner of a boozer. They do a bit of chit-chat, they dress like they're doing some decorating straight after, and they pull proper musician concentration faces whilst they play. One night they were having the day off and the ship's busker was moved in from the atrium. Maddie Wright is a very young lady, or more likely I'm getting very old, who looks like she's going to do some quite rocky stuff. Music, not boxing. But she actually does quite delicate folk music or folk versions of pop and rock songs. She was really good too, and I loved it in here. 8 out of 10. Beyond that, there's the usual mix of pianists and singers in the bars. There's karaoke and Brody's boozer, and of course, there'll be like the illuminated headphones for silent discos in the atrium. Again, no rating. It's impossible to quantify. It's good if you like it, and it's rubbish if you don't. In the end, Iona is attempting the impossible, trying to be all things to all people. Honestly, they really aren't doing a bad job. Entertainment on board P&O Iona. Done.